Hi there BookTube, it's Eleanor here, and today we're going to talk about books set in China and Japan. So I recently made a haul video where I talked about some books that were set in China and Japan that I picked up recently, and one of you asked if I would make a video on more books that I owned or I'd read that were set in these places because you were interested in them as well. And so I had a look through my shelves, and I have got a number of books that I've read that are set in China and Japan, but I have got an awful lot of books on my TBR shelves that are set in China and Japan, so I thought I would talk to you about all of them here, and it was good for me because I could pull them off my shelf. I'm going to now put them together, and yeah, I'm really excited. It's got me excited about them again. So there's quite a lot here, so let's jump in really quickly. So the first book is called Blossoms and Shadows by Lian Hearn. This is set in Japan in 1857. It's about a young girl. She dreams of being a doctor. Her father wants her to follow her dreams, but also because of the time period, he expects her to marry, and it's about how she follows her heart and what happens. The blurb here says, a woman searching for freedom, a country braced for war, and so this one sounds really intriguing. Next is the first in an epic fantasy series by Ken Liu, and that is The Grace of Kings. This is about an emperor. He has united, I suppose, nations or places, and he's on his deathbed. The gods are restless, and it's about a couple of people, I think, a bandit and the vengeance sworn son of a deposed duke, and about their rebellion against the emperor's regime. So this sounds really exciting as well, and if I like it, there's more to come in this series. Next up is a retelling of Cinderella. That is Shadow on the Moon by Zoe Marriott. This is a YA story. It's set in Japan. It's about a young girl. She's a shadow weaver. There's some fantastical elements in here, and it's about Cinderella, or the Cinderella types figure who wants revenge on the murderers of her family. Another Zoe Marriott book that's set in Japan is The Night Itself. This is the first book in The Name of the Blade. This is quite an old series. I do have the series of this, and I'm looking forward to getting to it. It's about a 15-year-old girl who steals the katana, her grandfather's priceless sword, for a fancy dress costume, and then is soon starting to get stalked by terrors of mythical Japan. So this sounds really exciting and fast-paced. Next up, I have a non-fiction, and that is The Rape of Nanking by Iris Chang. I picked this up after my Book Buddy box for November, which was The Blue Door by Lise Christiansen. I read that, and this book is mentioned at the end of that, and I really thought it sounded like an important book to read. It's about a time in history in December 1937. The Japanese army swept into the ancient city of Nanking, and within weeks more than 300,000 Japanese soldiers and citizens were brutally raped. And this is the documents and the information and story on that. The next book is set in two time periods. It's called Burnt Shadows by Camila Shasmi. This book is set in August of the 9th, 1945 in Nagasaki. It's about a woman. She's on the verge of getting married and a bomb goes off. We then also have a parallel story which ties in with this one, which is set in the wake of 9/11. So this one sounds like it's going to be really interesting. Next is The Gift of Rain by Tan Twang Eng. I've heard really great things about this one. It's set in Penang in 1939. 16-year-old Philip Hutton is a loner, half English, half Chinese, and feeling neither. He discovers a sense of belonging in an unexpected friendship with Hayato Endo, a Japanese diplomat. Philip shows his new friend around his adored island of Penang, and in return Endo trains him in the art and discipline of Aikido. But such knowledge comes at a terrible price. The enigmatic Endo is bound by disciplines of his own, and when the Japanese invade Malaya, threatening to destroy Philip's family and everything he loves, he realises that his trusted sensei, to whom he owes absolute loyalty, has been harbouring a devastating secret. Philip must risk everything in an attempt to save those he has placed in mortal danger and discover who and what he really is. Next, set in China in 1941, is In the Land of Paper Gods by Rebecca Mackenzie. This is a story set in a school, a missionary school at the top of a mountain. We follow a young girl, a young 10-year-old girl called Henrietta, who forms or becomes part of a club at school called the Priestess Club, and this is in the sort of wake of war, so it sounds like it's going to be interesting. Next, I have 5-Star Billionaire by Tash Orr. This is set in Shanghai. It's about 5 very different people and their lives and how they converge. You've got a factory girl turned gold digger, property magnate, pop star, entrepreneur and guru, and it's about lessons that they learn and how their stories intertwine. Next is a book which feels to me like it's going to be a bit of a mystery as well as sort of historical fiction, and that is The Investigation by Young Myung Lee. This is a book set in Fukuoka prison in 1944, where a man is found brutally murdered, and it's about one of the guards who is investigating what's happened, and it's a look into the prisons and the war, and I think it's going to be really interesting. The next book is set in 12th century Japan and is about a young girl who is trained in the art of the samurai, and that is The Pillow Book of the Flower Samurai by Barbara Lazare. This is about this girl training to be a samurai, but also learning the gift of storytelling, I believe, so I look forward to trying this one out. Next up is a book that was up for the Man Booker Prize this year, and that's Do Not Say We Have Nothing by Madeleine Thier. This book talks about the effects of China's revolutionary history, and we follow 2 interlinking musical families and we hear their stories from 1940s to the present day. Next is a Dictionary of Mutual Understanding by Jackie Coppleton. This is the story of a woman who lives in America. She is grieving still for her daughter and grandson who were killed in the 1945 Nagasaki bombing, and she's now a widow. She lives in America. She believes a local doctor is responsible for her loss because he caused a rift between her and her daughter, and then someone turns up on her doorstep claiming to be the grandson that she believed was killed in the bomb, and we follow the story and find out if this person really is her grandson and what happened. The next book is set in Beijing and is called The Uninvited by Geling Yang. This is a story of an unemployed factory worker. He lives in Beijing with his wife. He realises that if he poses as a journalist, he gains entry into all of these gourmet food feasts, and he becomes embroiled, I think, in some government affairs, and it all gets a bit out of control. It says here a delicious story of mistaken identity, so this one sounds really intriguing. Next is The Concubine of Shanghai by Hong Ying. This is the story of a concubine. It says sold by her aunt in 1907 to a reputable Shanghai brothel, 16-year-old Cassia is plucked from the rank of lowly servant to Power Chang, the fearsome boss of the Triad gang. Chastised by the madam for leaving her feet and breasts unbound, Cassia nonetheless becomes his favourite mistress and develops a taste for luxurious living whilst enjoying her first passionate encounters. But when Power Chang is brutally murdered, Cassia must fend for herself. Determined to succeed, she seduces the next Triad boss, Hyung Pie, and his lackey Yu, fighting to secure her position as the Queen of Shanghai, whatever the cost. And then the final one is one that was in my last haul, so you may have seen this, is Peach Blossom Pavilion by Ming Mei Yip. Set in 1918 Peking, this tells the story of a young girl. Her father is falsely accused of murder and is executed. Her family is dishonoured. Her mother is taken to a Buddhist nunnery, and our young girl Yang Yang is adopted by an aunt and taken into the Peach Blossom Pavilion. Here she learns the fine arts of womanhood and seduction, and we follow her story becoming a courtesan. So that is all the books I have on my shelf which are Japan and China themed or set in China and Japan. I have way more than I expected. I'm really excited now to get stuck into these. As I said when I did the haul originally of, I think it was this book and another, I just love books set in Japan and China, and I love the feel of them. So I'm really hoping to get to at least some of these soon. Let me know if you've read any of these, which ones you really enjoyed, any of these pique your interest, and I look forward to speaking to you soon. Bye for now, BookTube.